Hey everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Sam Shaw and I'm the founder of Wall Street Mastermind. This is Wall Street Mastermind's Elevate program, where we take our flagship coaching program and give it away for free to high potential students who are currently in a difficult financial situation. The goal of this show is to first and foremost give these students the coaching and guidance that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise and help them break into investment banking. Of course, we also want to give all of you an in-depth look at how to go about your own investment banking preparation process the right way, so that you can model it after the same proven methodology and strategies that we've used to place over 90% of our students into investment banking across every single bulge bracket and elite boutique bank over the last several years. With hundreds of thousands of applicants competing to break into investment banking globally each year, our team only has the bandwidth to help a very small percentage of you. So my hope is that this show helps all of you, even if you aren't able to directly participate in our program and work with us. So let's get to it. In this session, we learned that Ximena's passed her first round interview with Morgan Stanley that we prepped for last time. So this time, we do a mock interview to prepare her for the upcoming super day she has with Morgan Stanley. We covered the most important behavioral questions, talk about her internship experience in detail, go through a paper LBO model, and talk about a deal that she's been following. Ximena.
Hi, Sam.
How's it going?
You hear me? Good. How are you?
Good. So you have an interview tomorrow?
Yes.
Who's Morgan Stanley?
Yes.
Okay. This is a super day, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's definitely prep for that. And then the other interview is when?
So the other one, they haven't told us. I reached out to somebody else because they were supposed to schedule them this week, but even one of the interviewers hasn't been told anything about them. So I think for some reason they're a bit delayed. So we're not sure yet, but probably, I don't know if by the end of this week we'll be told, but probably next week, if not.
Okay. And what firm is that with?
That's Citi.
Okay. Oh, that's from the early ID thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is for MS New York.
Yeah.
Okay. That's exciting. So you want to do a mock, or how do you want to, what would be the most helpful for you?
I think so. I've been overthinking everything. So yeah, maybe let's just go with a mock.
Okay. Any particular area that you feel like you need to practice the most?
I think I definitely we want to do maybe some behaviorals. I had a talk with somebody, but I think I want to work on, I know my stories, but maybe structuring them when I'm in camera, I get really nervous. So maybe I want to go through that.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to mostly focus on behaviors?
I think right now, yeah. And if as we go on, we can do some basic technicals that you think might be on them. So maybe a little bit of both. That's fine.
Okay. This is super day virtual?
Yeah, it's from 12 to 2 p.m.
Yeah. So you have like 4 interviews?
They told it it's three 30-minute, three 30-minute interviews. 30-minute interviews. So I'm guessing we might have like 5 minutes between them or something like that.
All right, cool. Don't have your latest resume handy.
Do you want me to send it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can just drop it in the chat here. I feel like I'm trying to remember like what are the questions that I've already asked you before, but I guess it's probably fine if you repeat some questions. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, your answers might have changed, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
I mean, I've worked through any mistakes that we've done and tried to go over everything too.
All right. Got your resume here. Let me see here. 1 second. Okay. All right, so let's start with the basics. So tell me about yourself.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to interview me. To start, my name's Ximena. I'm currently a sophomore at NYU majoring in economics. over the past year, I've had 2 private equity analyst internships where I've done research across multiple industries, from IT companies to trucking service companies. I've contacted brokers on potential target company opportunities and built out financial forecasts. In addition to my working experience, I've been a part of finance extracurriculars and done some online finance courses. In one of these finance courses, I did a case study on Facebook's acquisition of WhatsApp that I thought was really interesting because of all the due diligence and the strategy being one of the largest deals in Silicon Valley at the time. These experiences showed me that investment banking seemed like a fast-paced career where I would have a steep learning curve and a lot of responsibility coming out of college. In addition to my academics, I'm also involved in sports and nonprofits. For example, over my gap year, I volunteered in Kenya, where I had the opportunity to help underprivileged community members learn about entrepreneurship and business, not coming from a background in finance. This showed me the impact and the importance of finance, and it was one of my most memorable experiences. And now I'm hoping to take the skills I've acquired the past year and apply them to an internship at a firm like Morgan Stanley.
Okay, so you reworked this answer.
So yeah, I think we talked about 2 versions. It's just because I've been in the early ID program, and that's what my mentor like really went down through. I've been kind of wanting to do what he was instructing me to do. So I have both stories, but when you ask me, that's the one that I've been just prepping the most. He had like the final say of whether I advanced in the city interview or not. So I was trying to follow what he was saying. So yeah, that's one of the scripts, but I still have the other one.
Okay, but you feel more comfortable with this one then?
This is the one that I guess that I just jumped to, but I don't know. What do you think?
Look, this is somewhat subjective. I know he and I have different opinions about it. The answer is fine,
Yeah.
there's nothing particularly wrong with it. I just think that I like doing things chronologically
Mhm.
and explain like making a flow from
Yeah.
but if this is what you're more comfortable with, then you can go with this one too. I mean, it's at the end of the day, like you need to be comfortable with your
Right.
answer. Like I don't want to like say you have to say things a certain way if it doesn't feel as good to you.
Mhm.
So so yeah, I mean that's kind of where I stand on that. Like I think with this one, yeah, you kind of hit on all the highlights of like these are the most important things that I've done, right? But yeah, it kind of feels to me like you're just listing off this, you're itemizing the things
Mhm.
already on your resume.
Right.
So,
Okay. I can do the other version.
I mean, what do you think? Because again, like,
Mhm. So I think personally, and that's just how it started. I think I said it before, I agreed with you the most, just because for me, it's also just easier. I'm going chronologically through life. And I think the only thing that kind of stood out to me was, I think, so this mentor as well, I think I told you, where part of his feedback was because in the original response, I included like me growing up and playing soccer as well, and like some other things. His feedback was that it was a little bit all over the place. He felt like it was too much activity because it's like, so soccer and then Kenya and then a gap year and then you're in school and all of these things. So for him it was, but then I think I'm just at one of those points where I've talked to a few people. And of course, I come back to what you teach me, but it's just so many people give you so many ideas. Like I met with the banker that's been helping me from JP Morgan. And she told me the same thing. She told me kind of like, that's so crazy that he told you were all over the place. Like you need to highlight your strengths and your story. So definitely, of course, more of what you've been telling me. So I went with that. But then again, I was trying to recruit for this program. So I just kind of went with the flow with that. But my only thing was with the sport. Yeah.
yeah. I think for the city interview, for sure, you had to do what he says because
Right.
the one that's making the call, right? So you don't want to come across as like not being coachable or whatever. But I think this is what you're gonna run into when you ask for advice from different people, especially with something that's kind of subjective, like a behavioral answer. I'm not even saying that if you use my answer, then it's for sure gonna work better than his answer because I don't know your interviewers at all. Who knows what your interviewers would prefer, right? What if your interviewer is like the city guy and he prefers the other style better? Like it could happen, right? So we don't know. And so I'm also not gonna sit here and say my way is my way or the highway or whatever. But I think that, and I don't know who your mentor city is. I don't know, like, what his opinion is based on. It could be very valid. I think that the way that I'm teaching it to you is how I've taught it to everyone else in the program.
Mhm.
And it's a pretty good sample size of it working well. So that's what I'm going off of. Right. I don't
Okay.
I don't even really care what my personal opinion is, to be honest, because like
Yeah.
just one person. I think like we just try to be as scientific as possible and base our frameworks on like what's working for people, right?
Right.
I think again though, at the end of the day, you're the one that has to deliver the answers. So it's important that you feel comfortable with your delivery. So whatever you think is going to make you just like perform the best, just like go with that. I'm not saying this answer that you just gave is bad. It's a personal preference thing, right?
Mhm.
I will say, I do feel like in terms of delivery, when you gave the answer just now, and I don't know if it would be the same as was the other version, but I think you need to be a little bit looser, if that makes
Yeah. Yeah, I get that a lot.
like you're trying to be very uh I don't know what the word is. You're trying to be very presentable or very on point with everything
Mhm.
you say, and it's making it kind of like unnatural almost. Like there's no way that's how you normally talk. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like really, really bad, but it was like I could tell you were like, I don't know. It was I don't know how to describe it. It's like I almost felt like I'm talking to like an AI or something. I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
What comes to mind? But just be
Okay.
a bit more human. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
just be yourself and like you're telling your story. You have a good story. You've done a lot of interesting stuff, and you should be like excited to share your story with this person that you're meeting for the first time.
Mhm.
I don't know, just like pretend you're meeting like a friend for the first time, or you're going on out on like a first date, when you're like telling the other person about yourself, like how would you do it? Right? I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know how you are in those like environments, but
Okay. Yeah.
just be more human. Like
Yeah.
that. Like at the end of the day, again, I always remind you guys like the interviews. Your job is to make the other person like you as a human being. That's really all it is. Like we say, like behaviorals, technicals, this and that, blah 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 blah. Like it's just about making the other person like you.
Right. Definitely.
So when you keep that in mind, it's just like how would you interact with like a new friend that you're meeting for the first time, and you want to be likable. Like it's not by being like super uptight or like overthinking. You say you overthink a lot. It's not about like overthinking. Like, am I doing every little thing right? Just like the time to do that is beforehand when you're practicing and when you're doing the mocks and when you're putting in the reps. And then when it's time to like actually interview and like it's like soccer. You play soccer, so it's like the time to do all the drills and practice and whatever is like during practice. But then like when you go out there and it's time to play the game, you're not thinking about technique or whatever anymore. You just at that point it should just be muscle memory and you're just like letting it flow, right?
Yeah.
So we try to do that.
Yeah.
All right. So why banking?
I'm most interested in investment banking for three main reasons. I would say the learning opportunity, the impactful work, and the teamwork environment. For starters, I think investment banking provides one of the steepest learning opportunities coming out of college. You're working with small teams and oftentimes with really high caliber individuals like managing director or vice presidents that are around you and giving you professional advice. Second, I think would be the impactful environment. Oftentimes you're working on deals and helping clients make some of the biggest decisions for their businesses. Especially at Morgan Stanley, working with associates that they've talked about some large deals that they worked on that have appeared on the newspapers, such as the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times. And I think seeing your work coming across when you're working with some of these huge companies is really impactful and motivating in the work that you do. And lastly would be the teamwork environment. Playing in team sports most of my life, I've always loved the camaraderie that ends up from working with a team and the kind of teamwork environment that is presented when you're all working towards a common goal together and what comes out of that. Oftentimes in investment banking, you're working with people more than you're seeing your family and friends. So I think that's something that is very important and something that I look forward to in my experience. So those are the three main reasons why I'm most interested.
Okay. I think it's good. I think only small nit would be like the impactful work part where I think you mentioned talking to some associates and hearing about, how they talked about the deals being papers and stuff like that. Like maybe just like name the associate, just
Okay.
like just drop their name, whatever their full name is, right? To be a bit more specific, but
Okay.
I think everything else is good. I would say potentially. So I know there's a framework. I know the framework is like, we have 3 reasons that we go to, but the only thing that I could see is like potentially missing is like there's no mention anywhere of like why you're interested in finance, like the work, like the subject matter of
Okay.
finance itself.
Mhm.
And so I think if there is a way to weave that in somewhere, it would just like
Okay.
plug a potential hole that people can pick at when it comes to like what this answer might be lacking. Right. So
Right.
maybe it's in the middle part where you say like, because you said first thing like learning opportunity, right? Really steep learning curve, small team, high caliber individuals, that's all fine. Second part is the nature of the work. I think
Impactful work.
for one, like, I've done multiple finance internships at this point.
Mhm.
From that experience, I've learned that I like just genuinely enjoy, um, genuinely enjoy the work of like, like analyzing companies and thinking about acquisitions, and because that's what you've been doing at
Mhm.
internships, right? So like mentioning that quickly about how you've done it and you enjoy it, so no one can question it. And then I think also like part of the reason why you really enjoy it is just how impactful the work actually is.
Mhm.
And you go back to like your original point about you're helping clients make some of the biggest decisions for their businesses, blah 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 blah. Because then
Okay.
that way you just kind of like, instead of just saying impactful work, it's like the nature of the work is
Mhm.
you enjoy finance and you've done it, and two, it's very impactful. Right.
Okay.
The final point being team environment. I think that would be a good answer.
Okay. Okay.
Cool.
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. And why Morgan Stanley?
So Morgan Stanley is my first choice for three main reasons. One is the learning opportunity, two is the people and that diversity, and three is their commitment to giving back. So one, Morgan Stanley is a global bank that is consistently at the top of the league tables, generating some of the highest deal fees across M&A, debt, and equity. Knowing that I would be at a bank with such strong performance, I think would give me a great learning opportunity and a well-rounded experience. Second would be its people and their attention to diversity. After going to the Insights program and listening to managing director so-and-so, he talked about his experience not coming from a background in finance and majoring in engineering, and the way that Morgan Stanley supported him throughout his career and made him so successful and become the managing director that he is today. In addition to that, I was able to attend an SEO conference with Miss so-and-so who talked about all the adversities that she faced as a woman, a Black woman in finance, and how much support she also received from Morgan Stanley, and how they supported her as well in becoming such a well-known individual in finance, and pushing her goals. Sorry, okay, and pushing her throughout her career. I think those are too repetitive, but from both of these speakers, I felt really identified. Also, not coming from a background in finance, I felt like I would be very supported coming out of college and my learning opportunity. And lastly would be their commitment to giving back. I think this is something Morgan Stanley excels in. After my volunteering experience in Kenya, I knew I wanted to be somewhere where I was not only working with professionals, but also focused on giving back to communities. Morgan Stanley, with their Morgan Stanley Foundation that is celebrating 60 years today, encourages workers to participate in movements such as the Move for Meals, and has also done so much for child and community support. I think is really admiring and makes me feel like I will be working for a company where I'm giving back either directly or indirectly by being there. So those are 3 main reasons.
Okay. So a couple things. Obviously, the middle part, I think, kind of like tripped up, but
Yep.
you know, practice that more. And then like the 2 people that you're gonna name, you just like not know their name, or you just forgot, or
No, I did. I just didn't know if I wanted to name them, but yeah, no, I definitely do.
I see. Okay, so
They're
you
very well known.
name them in the actual
Of
interview.
course.
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure. And then and so that's fine. I think like I think the first part with the learning opportunity is like, hey, they're a global bank at the top of the league tables. It's going to give you a great learning opportunity and a well-rounded experience. And you mentioned like, you know, M&A, debt, and equity. I think it can be like a little bit more clear that you want to work at a bank that's going to give you exposure to all these different products. Because what that's going to do is it's going to like eliminate all the elite boutiques from the equation. Because most elite boutique firms, they'll only do M&A, right? And any capital raises. So when it comes to like why this bank and why not why this bank, you always want to try to like just like indirectly eliminate their competition as you're giving more reasons, right? And by the end of the reason, you isolate it down to like, well, of course Morgan Stanley is like your top choice, right? Because all these other guys have been eliminated already or whatever, right? So learning up, I think like I would make that small tweak, right? I mean, you already mentioned M&A, debt, and equities. You're like, you know, I think like going to a firm that not only does all 3, but going to a firm that not only offers all 3 products, but also is strong across the board in all 3. That's going to not only provide you with a well-rounded experience, but also like the best, like just the best, not just a well-rounded, but also the best experience, right? And so, because I think like if you just say like, oh, you also do capital raises, then that still leaves like all the other bulge bracket banks. But if you say like not only does all 3, but is strong across every single one of those areas, then that probably also eliminates a lot of the bulge bracket banks, right? Because not as strong across the board. So that's how I would tweak that first part, and then like practice it, because that was the way I did it wasn't very smooth. But second part we kind of talked about, so diversity, and that's fine because you're a diversity candidate, so I think that's okay. And commitment to giving back. You tie that back to Kenya, and I think that's good too. Yeah, I think that's fine too. I think maybe like, you know, saying something like, I don't know, what am I trying to say? Saying something like, you know, so obviously like the most, I don't know, like, because here's the qualm that I'm having is like, when we bring up, like your commitment to giving back as one of the reasons why we want to work at the bank, I think we talked about this before. I could see some bankers that where that answer resonates with them, and I can also see some bankers that where like that answer doesn't resonate with them at all.
Mhm.
It is not why they themselves chose to, or this is not how they themselves would choose like which bank they want to work for.
Mhm.
Okay? Like not everyone is that altruistic, I guess.
Right.
And so I think when I think that, I think like tying it back to you volunteering in Kenya, I think that helps because you're showing and not just telling. If only you're just telling, it sounds kind of fake. When
Right.
you show it, then I think it's better. But the other thing that I'm kind of debating is like, I don't know if there's a way to, I don't know, like just kind of reinforce why that's important. So it's just like, you know, obviously, I think like investment banks, um, the top investment banks in the world, we're in the business of uh, making money first and foremost. I mean, both obviously for the firm and for the shareholders, but also for our clients, right? And Morgan Stanley is clearly like very, very good at that. There's no doubt about it. But um, I think on top of that, when you also have a firm that doesn't just like only care about making money, but it's also like, using its vast resources to give back to the community, it just makes like what is already like very impactful, meaningful work even that much more fulfilling. Something like that. Like I'm being very careful with the phrasing because I'm not trying to like knock banking because like I think what I'm trying to say is like a lot of people hate on investment bankers or like the general public
Yep.
perception of investment banking is like just greedy Wall Street people. And I mean I get comments like this on like my ads and stuff sometimes about how
Yep.
like investment banking is evil and whatever. And I was just, all these people don't really know what investment bankers do.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Read the news about like I don't know the financial crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's like still the point stands is
Yeah.
like it's great, and I understand that first and foremost, like this is what our job is like we're helping our clients make a lot of money, and we're helping our firm make a lot of money and our shareholders. But like, and that's great, and I think the work is really cool and it's exciting, and it's meaningful, and it's impactful, all the things you already mentioned.
Hmm.
On top of that, like giving back makes it even more fulfilling. I don't know, something along those lines. So I'm like trying to straddle both sides. You get what
Right.
I think if you have something like that, it might make it even just like make that answer even more palatable for like a broader audience.
Okay. Makes sense.
Um, but yeah, I mean these are like small things. I'm being like nitpicky.
Please do. That's okay.
Okay. Okay. So moving over to your resume. So the primary deal you worked on at Valpo was dental practice deal. Is that right?
The deal that
Yeah,
was at Questa.
that was a question.
Yeah.
So your first bullet on Valpo says conduct research to identify and evaluate 50 plus dental practices and medical spas in Southern California.
Hmm.
So like what was that about? It's like you guys are trying to either acquire.
That's just generating leads.
Okay, so that wasn't like an actual deal.
No.
Okay. What was like a deal that you worked on?
The Questa one.
Costa?
Hmm.
Okay. So it wasn't a live deal at Valpo.
No. This is the one where it's been more reaching out to brokers, being kind of in the middle between brokers and the managers, kind of giving them companies that I think we could look into, and then we'll like review them week to week and see what fulfills the requirements and what we should extend an LOI to or not.
Yeah. All right, talk to me about the deal at Costa then. That's fine.
Okay. So at Questa, Okay, so at Questa, I was working with different industries. One industry that we started looking into was IT companies. So this one company that we looked into, I created an LBO for. So they were generating 500K in free cash flow at acquisition using a 4x multiple after doing some industry research. The company was valued at $2 million. We were using a capital structure of 10% equity and 90% debt. So yeah, we were using oh, wait, can I start over? I got it. I messed it up. Okay. Okay. So EBITDA at acquisition was 500K, and we were using a 4x multiple after doing some industry research. So we valued the company at 2 million. The structure of the deal was 10% equity and 90% debt. So we put down 200K at acquisition, and the rest, the 1.8 million, was with debt, using an assumption of 4% growth rate over 10 years. The exit EBITDA value was 640K, and using the same 4x multiple, the enterprise was 2.6 million at exit. It was around 2.6 million at exit. We were also paying down all the debt by the 10th year. So we had 100% ownership. So going from the 200K to the 2.6 million, it was a 13x multiple on invested capital, which ended up being a 29% IRR. And we were looking to be between 25% and 30%. So that was more to our upper bound, which made us end up extending our LOI and look more into the deal. Unfortunately, shortly before I left, another much larger private equity company came and acquired that deal. And yeah, that was my more on hands experience with the IT deal.
Got it. What'd you say was IRR?
29%.
29?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. All right. So, and what kind of company was this you said?
It was an IT company.
What do they do? What does that mean?
So it was a software company. So they so people were purchasing their software deals. So they were I believe they were doing, it was cybersecurity research or work packs where they would look into the company and help protect it, give it some cybersecurity services. So it's subscription based. I believe it was year to year. So that's basically what the foundation of it was.
So they sell the software itself, like or are they just like outsourcing someone else's software and they're the service company that installs the software?
Okay, I'll definitely look back into this, but I believe they did it because I remember they had a really professional team of professionals. So they were the ones that were making the software.
Okay, so it's a SaaS business.
Yes.
Okay. Maybe instead of saying IT companies, and just
Yeah. Okay.
it's a SaaS company, it's a software company selling cybersecurity software.
Okay. Yeah.
People purchasing their cybersecurity packs. Like that sounds weird. Like I don't know.
Okay.
I think all you're saying is they sell cybersecurity software on a subscription basis.
Yeah.
Using annual contracts.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, $4 million EBITDA. They have 500K of EBITDA.
Mm-hmm.
$2 million. How what was their EBITDA margin?
What was their EBITDA margin? How much revenue they got? I mean, I would need to know revenue to EBITDA, right? I don't know how much revenue they generated. I will check. I mean, I have the model.
So you should know how much revenue they do, right?
Okay. Yeah.
You know they're valued off of EBITDA multiple. Like if they're doing 500K of EBITDA, I don't know, for a software business.
Yeah.
It could be like $1 million of revenue generating 500K. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But that's important to know. And then so when you said 4% growth rate over 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Is that 4% growth on revenue or 4% growth on EBITDA?
It was Ebitda, I believe.
Okay.
No, I think, okay, I have it written. Yeah, I need to. So it was a 4% growth rate. So yeah, I think it was on revenue, because EBITDA was just a percentage of revenue. So revenue was 1.5.
Okay, revenue is 1.5, so they're 33%.
33%, yeah, 33 margin.
And you said that the exit EBITDA was how much?
Exit EBITDA was 640, rounding.
How does that, if you're doing 500
Mm-hmm.
and you grow that by 4% a year for the next 10 years, I'm getting to 740.
So here I have like the first year 0, margin is 33%, but for all of the following years, it's 29% of revenue. The margin is 29% for all of the following years.
Okay. So that's why we need the revenue. So if we start with the revenue and grow that by 4%, that's 2.22 billion. Sorry, 2.22 million times 29% is 6.
Mm-hmm.
I see. All right, so this is why, right? Like, because the way you said it was, we use the assumption of 4% growth rate over 10 years. We never mentioned what the revenue was, and then so you said that got us to a exit EBITDA of 640. So I was doing 500K, growing at 4% a year for 10 years, and I was getting to like the 740 number. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, tick and tighter numbers. Do you know why you guys assumed a 29% EBITDA margin when historically it's been 32?
I think because we were analyzing it throughout the pandemic, like in March, we were trying to be really conservative about it. So it was like, in case of anything, let's do 4%. I didn't want to like get too difficult into it, but I did like a base, bear, and a bull model. So I just talked about the base, which I think might just be the easiest.
All right. And how did you come up with the 4% growth rate?
He told me to use that.
Okay, that's not a good answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, so if you had to give a better answer, like what would you say to that? How did you come up with that?
So I guess, well, throughout the pandemic, we weren't expecting the economy to do so well. Normally, the economy will grow at around like 2% or so a year in the long run. So I think, being an IT company that had about 10 years in practice, we weren't expecting it to grow too fast exponentially. So we were doing around 4%. Being an IT company, a software company, that would likely be very favorable and in high demand, but also keeping it conservative more towards what how the economy might be in the following year.
So you guys look at their historical growth rate. We're like, what has it been in like the last few years?
The historical, yeah, it was the historical growth rate.
Like probably, I mean, that would be the starting point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the historical was 18 from 2018 to through 2019. Gross was 36%, and then it was 55%.
They've been growing at 36 to 55%.
Yeah, total revenue went from 36% to 55%.
Those are the last two historical years.
Yeah,
So how would you go from that to like
to
4?
4%.
That's basically saying they've been growing really fast, and now we're almost assuming they're just going to be flat for the next 10 years. Like I understand, like I mean, if we were building DCF, like I understand, like in the outer years, it will probably, gradually decrease over time until it got down to that level.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't be like just fall off a cliff and then just kind of stay there, right?
Yeah. Well, Yeah, and well, 2018 it was 700K, 2019 it was 970K, and 2020 was 1.5 million.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I don't know. That one's like, I know he told you to use 4%. Um, it's kind of a weird assumption.
Mm-hmm.
So you still work for him? No, you don't.
No, I don't.
So ideally, like, I would like to know what his rationale was so you can justify it. But I think
Mm,
maybe you just don't. Maybe you just don't get into all that. But maybe instead you just say, um, because if the starting EBITDA was 500, and then the exit EBITDA was 640. That means that it increased, your EBITDA increased by about 28% over the 10-year holding period. Yeah, it's so low. Okay. I guess maybe this is why, maybe this is why you don't get into the revenue. Um, so you just stick to the EBITDA level. Like, unless we can come up with a good explanation for the revenue. Otherwise, like, I would just try to stay away from it.
for the revenue?
Yeah, like, I know I asked you about the revenue, so then,
Right.
yeah, so then you had to like answer, right? But now that you've answered it, like, I don't really understand the 4%. So
Yeah. But so if without me having told you that, like what you said before, which was correct, it was, well, no, because it wasn't. But without like getting into details, could I say based on historicals, we used a 4%? But isn't that really low in general? Like companies don't grow at 4%.
okay, here's what you can do. You can just say, you said this company's been around for like 10 years or something, right?
Yeah.
And it's been 10 years, and it's also like only doing like $1.5 million in revenue. So it's not like your typical huge software company.
Right.
Well, I think just don't be so honest and tell them like, oh, like the two most recent year, the growth rate has been like 38 and 55% or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, nobody knows. We don't know what this company is. It's private. No one can look it up. So you can just say, yeah, we just assumed that the compounded annual growth rate was going to be about 4% throughout the whole period. So we're
Okay.
not like in any given year is 4%, but just like the overall like straight line average for that period is about 4%. And to come up with that assumption, we actually just looked at historical performance for like the last 2 or 3 years, and then we um, discounted it slightly just to be conservative because obviously we're the buyer, so we're gonna err
Okay.
on the conservative side of things, right? But you just keep it vague, just like, yeah, it's based on like, because let's say like if recent years it was like, I don't know, 10%, 7%, 5% or something, like it's been coming down. So you assume 4% for the rest.
Mm,
I think that's fine, right? And I think like you could argue that someone who's been around for a company that's been around for 10 years, they're pretty much close to like what their steady state growth rate is going to be already anyway.
yeah.
So 4% is, I guess, possible. But so you just say like, yeah, so we assume that the revenue is going to grow at about 4%. And we also assume that their margins would be slightly lower by the time they exited from about the low 30s
Right.
to like the high 20s, like 29% or so.
Yeah. Is that something also? So for 2000, so for 2020 was like I said 33 and then it goes down to 22. Like if I had just said 33, you would have gone like over 700K. I guess we were, like I said, so we did like a 4% growth rate, but then we used 29%. Should I just say I don't know how to do that jump from 33 to 29%? Do I just say that? Like we used 30, it was EBITDA was 33%, and then we used 29% for the rest of the EBITDA margins? Like there has to be an explanation for that, no?
I think it's the same explanation. It's just like, you don't have to say exactly 33% because they don't know.
Yeah. So just low 30s.
I just say like their EBITDA margin historically has been in the low 30s. And then like we haircut it a little bit because again, we were trying to be conservative and have some buffer in there. And then so we kind of modeled it at 29%, which is just a hair below 30. And based on those assumptions, when we extrapolate out 10 years, we get to an exit EBITDA value of $640,000, right? And if we assume the same exit multiple, then that gets us to $2.6 million, right? So that's all fine. And then like the 100% debt pay down. So how much free cash flow was this company generating each year?
They were generating every year like 20,000 more than the previous year.
Well, so EBITDA started at 500K.
So EBITDA started at 500K and free cash flow was 240. 204. It was around 200.
200K a year.
200 that year. And then the following year, it was 430K.
Why does it go by so much? Like, what are the other assumptions? Like, what's CapEx, for example?
CapEx was 1%.
Okay. I mean, I think, look, to pay off $1.8 million of debt in 10 years, it's not hard. You just
Oh,
need,
so okay.
you just need to average $180,000 of free cash flow a year, right?
180?
You have $180,000 free cash flow per
Yeah.
year, that's $1.8 million.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, you guys are generating more than $180,000 a year because your EBITDA is already starting at 500K.
Yeah.
Growing from there.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the 100% debt pay down is to be expected because 10 years is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine. But just like understand, like if they want to, they can ask you about like how you got to the free cash flow, like how you got to the debt pay down assumptions. Which
Yeah.
is asking you like, how did you forecast your free cash flow? Right.
Right.
So to forecast free cash flow, then there's like other variables like working capital and CapEx, and
Right.
I'm sure those line items are in there, right?
Yeah. It's just EBITDA, adjusted EBITDA minus CapEx. That was the free cash flow.
Okay. All right, so you got 13 times MOIC, 20% RR. That obviously sounds pretty good. Another much larger P from a quality deal. Okay. So it seems like you guys could have paid more, right? Like, did you guys try to compete for this deal?
No,
Okay.
not from what I know. I knew that it seemed like a good deal by the time that I exited the internship. We didn't have that competition, so that's why we extended an LOI and we're going forward with it. But a few months later, I reached out back to the owner and I asked him what had happened, and he had told me what had happened. So I'm not exactly sure how the negotiation went down, but I guess they came in with a much better offer.
Okay, so the answer basically was like this happened after you left, so we don't have the details, which is fine. I guess aside from the numbers from like the LBO modeling, which we just talked about, like what was it about this company that made you guys interested in it? Like what makes this a good investment?
So one, it had recurring revenue, which was something we were looking for. We also were looking at low CapEx. We had tried looking through quite a few other companies, such as a trucking company, which was extremely high CapEx and was not good since we were only holding the company for 10 years. So it had very low CapEx, it had recurring revenue, and it it was pretty consistent in its revenue growth being the 10th year. So we weren't expecting anything unexpected. It had a well-run business for a while, so management was in place and knew what they were doing. So were the best assumptions that made us go into it. Also, the management team was very professional. A lot of them had gone to graduate school and MIT, so they knew what they were doing and they were really good workers.
Okay, so recurrent revenue, low capex, and professional management team. Okay. I think like for this answer, but like why you like it, like it's kind of similar to the stock pitch question that we do. And so for like the frameworks, like I think recurrent revenue and low capex can be kind of like lumped into one. That's just like saying, so like, hey, so there are several reasons why we thought this was a good deal. One, the financial profile was good, right? Like had a recurrent revenue model, which made it more predictable, very low capex. It's software business, and so there's a lot to like there. Second of all, I mean, within the software industry, obviously there's a lot of different verticals, but like I said, this is like within the cybersecurity industry, and cybersecurity is an industry that we thought had a lot of tailwinds. Like there's more and more kind of just like cyber crimes and hacks and stuff like that now in this day and age, right? And so that was a market that we felt like was going to be was going to continue to expand, right? And then last but not least, obviously with any investment, like a lot of times it comes down to having the right management team in place. So the management team here was very impressive. They're professional, they're well educated, they had good degrees from good schools, and we felt good about the people that were running the company. That I don't know. I mean, because typically after you buy, you could like, well, it's a search fund. So presumably, wouldn't you swap out the management team? Like, wouldn't your search fund guy run the company himself? Because if he would, then the management team doesn't really hold as much water,
Right. But it's like the people that worked in it. It wasn't just like, so, okay. Yeah. It wasn't just the management team. It's like the person that, like the workers of the actual company were very strong. Like there were like 20 workers at the actual company, and most of them had like really, really good education.
Okay. So I want to make that clear that you're talking about not like the management team, which they're probably going to get swapped out because that's what they're selling. Right? But it's the team underneath that's like really good, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And so even though we're going to talk about the management team who are looking to exit, but the team underneath them was very strong, well educated, good experience, and we were excited to see what they'd be able to accomplish if they had like an even more professional management team, which would potentially take them from more of a mom and pop operation to something a bit more professional, right? I don't know, something like that. But I think the biggest thing is just like adding something about the industry that this company is in.
Okay.
Because with any good investment, like the market matters, right? So that has to be somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, but it's good that I can tell that you actually went back and studied the numbers and stuff, which is good, because and they actually tie for the most part makes sense. And so if they do ask you about it, then that'll be a good opportunity for you to kind of demonstrate the knowledge. So that's good.
My first round asked me about it. This is kind of what I went through.
Okay, and you were able to answer everything that they wanted to know.
Yeah, I went through it and he was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
It's good. Yeah, because a lot of people can't do that. So okay, let's see here. Hold on, how am I doing on time? Okay, we have office hours after this. I think maybe do one or two more. So tell me about the biggest setback that you've had.
I would say one big setback that I had was early on in high school. So growing up, I originally wanted to be a professional soccer player. That had been my dream all my life, but going into high school, I tore both of my ACLs and basically had multiple surgeries throughout the first 2 years. That was really mentally exhausting as I was constantly trying to find ways to strengthen my muscle and going to therapy every single day after school for about 2 hours, just trying to get my muscles back and strengthen them. After 2 years of recoveries and having to have more surgeries scheduled and recovering from that as well, I ended up having to switch to a less contact sport. So even though at the end I wasn't able to get back into soccer as competitively, I still looked to join the cross country team and the track team and still have a good athletic career at the end. So even though I was faced with a lot of adversities going into college and sometimes things didn't go my way, having a positive attitude and working through those first 2 years still allowed me to enjoy sports. And to this day, running is something that I do every day and it's really important to me. So that was definitely something where being positive and working through it was really important.
Got it. I think like for this question of like telling me about a setback, the traits that they're looking for is probably more like it can be how you bounce back from it, but part of it I think is also like highlighting like your resilience and like not giving up.
Okay.
Right. And so I think like, especially for your story, if it's like you had to rehab for 2 years, that's the part that really highlights the resilient part of the story.
Right. Okay.
I feel like we kind of glossed over that.
Yeah, I did. Again, I think just going back to just everything and advice from everything, I think I've been like, so basically the complexity of the story is like surgery, getting back to it, 2 games in, tearing it again, and another 7 months of surgery. So like going through those phases every single time, it's so complex where I don't want like the person to get kind of overwhelmed or lost or get too rambly into it. So I guess, yeah, I've cut it down.
It kind of reminds me of like the Klay Thompson story. I don't know if you've been following me, but I'm a Warriors fan. So, but
Okay.
Klay Thompson, it's like, was like probably a top 20 NBA basketball player, tore his ACL, then he was like rehabbing for an entire season. And then like right towards the end of his recovery, he was about to come back. He like played in a pickup basketball game and then he hurt something else and then he lost another season.
Yep.
And this year he just finally came back like halfway through the season and now he's playing and he's trying to like get back to like the level that he was at. And everyone's like, oh my God, Clay's like amazing because like to have to go through that and just like how tough it is. And I feel like it's a very similar story. Like I don't feel like it's that hard to understand.
Okay.
I don't know how to tell it. Like you can leave out like the nitty gritty details, but it's like my dream was to play soccer. Well, my dream was to play professional soccer growing up. And like going to high school, I had a very serious injury. I tore both my ACLs, and that was a big setback. I had to rehab for 7 months, which is like really grueling because like going to PT every single day after school, doing the same mundane, boring exercises day after day after day after day. But I did it because like soccer was my dream. And then like I actually made it back, but that wasn't the end of the story because then I played in like 2 games and I hurt, I don't know, this other thing or
The
whatever.
other ACL. Yeah.
I hurt my other ACL. And so that was like very devastating for me because I had just come back and I felt like I worked so hard for 7 months and I only got to play in 2 games and I hurt the other ACL. And this time like I had to go through rehab again. And I think a lot of people would have just given up. But again, because this was like my dream, so I didn't want to give up. So I went through another round of rehab, same thing, going to PT every day after school, doing the same boring exercises. This time it took, I don't know, how long did it take? Like
So it was 7 months.
another 7 months, right? And I came back from that, but and then what, the doctor just told you couldn't play soccer?
Yeah, well, it was up to me at that point, and it was just not worth it. I had spent 2 years with it, so I just decided to do cross country.
Um, and then so I came back after the second time, but by then, because I had taken so long in my rehab, I had kind of missed the window realistically for like playing professional soccer. And so
Mhm.
at that point, I still wanted to be involved athletically, and so I decided to kind of like channel it elsewhere into cross country. But I think like the most important thing that I learned from that whole experience um, is just like how resilient I can be, and there's always going to be setbacks, and sometimes like more than once, and um, it's always tough in the moment, but I don't know. It's not about how you fall down, but how you get back up. And I think I've always like carried that lesson with me. I know that in the future, throughout my career, I'm sure there's going to be other setbacks, but honestly, it's hard for me to imagine too many things that are tougher than what I've already gone through. So I feel like I'm well prepared for it.
Okay.
Something
Okay.
I don't know, like I don't feel like that's hard to follow.
Okay.
It is also depending on like how you tell the story, right?
Right.
Like after the first injury and recovery, the listener would thought like, oh, so that's it, like the story's over. I was like, but that wasn't the end of the story. And so
Okay.
now I was like, okay, what else? There's more, right? Like you can do stuff like that to like
Mhm.
keep keep their attention. You know,
Okay.
I feel like that's better than just like glossing over because yeah, like the answer that you gave, I didn't really feel like I had a strong takeaway from like, okay, so what is that supposed to tell me about this person?
Mhm. Okay.
This person shows like, okay, this tells me that she doesn't quit, right? Which is kind of like what you're trying to convey. So I think like I would say like for these like tell me about yourself stories, um, first think like what is the quality that I mean usually the quality is like whatever they ask you, like tell me about time you demonstrate leadership, tell me about time you demonstrate teamwork, whatever. So it's like it's very obvious, but like in this case, tell me about the biggest setback that you had. Um, the emphasis is not on like what is the setback because you can choose whatever setback you want. In this case, you have to first ask yourself like, okay, what are they really getting at? Oh, they want to see how I respond when there is a setback,
Mhm.
and put the emphasis on that part of the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let's see here. Let's do one more. Tell me about a deal. Tell me about a deal you've been following that you find to be interesting.
Yeah, a deal that I followed that was announced in 2020 but closed late last year was Analog Devices acquisition of Maxim Integrated for $20 billion at an all-stock deal. Maxim Integrated had 0.63 shares, got 0.63 shares of Analog Devices, and was given 31% of the combined company, ownership of the combined company. Since the pandemic, there's been a semiconductor shortage, and the US really saw its dependence on China for semiconductor chips that imported over 80% of their chips. Um, I think this was a really strategic acquisition, given that not only would it allow them to have synergies within their research and development and cross all their different kinds of chips, but it would also put them as a better competitor to Texas Instruments, combining the second and third largest competitors. And I also think this is very strategic going forward since there's so much talk about different manufacturers coming into the US, such as TSMC, that's planning to open a fabrication plant in Arizona this year. I think as more competitors come in, this positions Analog Devices and Maxim Integrated to be a much stronger competitor and to get to know the market and the consumers that they will be able to provide at an earlier time.
Okay. So what does this have to do with, just so I understand, what does this have to do with the semiconductor shortage and the US depending on China? Is ADI or Maxim, is one of them a US company and the other one is Chinese or something? Or what is the...
Okay, so yeah, maybe, yeah, definitely. So both of them are US companies. It's supposed to be the second and the third largest US semiconductor companies. So it's basically, since the shortage, the US saw its dependence on China. So now it's trying to bring back a lot of manufacturing and become less dependent on the global supply chain. So coming back, now they're trying to bring manufacturers back to the US, and there's so many things going on, like the CHIPS Act in Congress and things like that, that are focusing on subsidizing manufacturing companies to come here and building them. So like most companies take like 2 years to be installed. So this was like a really good way to accelerate that, because there's still going to be that shortage going forward.
Most companies take 2 years to be installed.
So I mean, manufacturing companies, from what I read, they take 2 years to
Factories and stuff.
yeah.
Okay. I think there's like, that part needs to be explained better, because as someone who's like, and your interviewer most likely will be also for this room, like as someone who's like not super familiar with the semiconductor, like unless you're a banker that just covers semiconductors, but like as someone who's not super well versed in semiconductor and what's going on in that space, like when you just explained it, when I asked you to follow up, then I understood what you were trying to say, but the way you delivered it, there wasn't enough context.
Okay.
So it left me wondering, like, what, like you didn't say like, hey, advanced analogic and Maxim Integrator are the second and third biggest semiconductor manufacturers in the US.
Mm-hmm.
That's important context, right?
Yeah.
They decided to merge together, where, you know, Maxim Integrator got 31% of the combined company. And the reason why they decided to merge, where I thought it was a very smart acquisition, because for a couple of reasons. One, obviously there's a ton of synergies, both on the R&D side, but as well as in, like throughout other parts of the business, right? Because there's a lot of redundancies. And this allows them to compete better against Texas Instruments, which is the largest semiconductor manufacturer in the country, right? And so that's one. But secondly, it's also based on like where the market's going. There's been a huge shortage of semiconductor chips, especially since the pandemic started. The U.S. government realized how dependent we are on other countries such as China, semiconductors. So they're trying to bring a lot of manufacturing back home, and they're trying to pass bills and create incentives for domestic manufacturers. And by merging right now, it allows what was it, ADI, Advanced Analogic. It allows
Analog devices. Yeah.
sorry, what is it?
Analog devices.
Allows analog devices to be better positioned to take advantage of this macro environment and become a bigger player in the space, and also get out ahead of it before some of these other companies also try to come take a piece of the pie. For example, you know that TSMC, which is a Taiwanese company, is also going to be coming into the US. In fact, they're working on building a factory right now in Arizona. That's going to take probably at least a couple of years. And so this gives analog devices a head start against competition like that as well. I don't know, something like that. But
Yeah.
like, I'll be more clear. I might have been a bit wordy because I just made that up on the spot, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Okay. What about that background that you just gave, like you just said? So put that at the end of the framework, not at the beginning. So just like the beginning is just the deal, the synergies it creates, and then at the end talk about all the background and rationale behind it. I think I was confused whether to put that at the beginning of like what this pandemic is and then how strategic this was, or to talk about what the deal is and then all of that background. That seems to make more
Follow
sense.
the original framework. So like, here's what the deal is, right? Analog devices acquire maximum integrated for $20 billion. Um, I don't think you need to like get into the nitty gritty of like, oh, they got 0.63 shares, but I think like, they acquired them for $20 billion, which was a X% premium to where they were trading at, because I think they were a public company, right?
Mhm.
This gave Maximum Integrated 31% of the combined company, and um, and actually ended up this ended up combining the second and third largest semiconductor manufacturers in the United States.
Okay.
That could be like the facts, right? And then like next,
Okay.
um, you know, well, actually like that, like this ended up being the second, and the combination between the second and third largest semiconductor manufacturers in the United States could be like the second part about like why does this matter or who cares, right? So maybe it's like, okay, acquired for $20 billion, there's an X% premium to where they were trading at. It gave Maxim, 31% of the combined company. And I don't know if you know the valuation multiple, but if you do, like you could even weave that in as well, right?
Okay.
And I don't know if this is like what the multiple was. Was it a high multiple, low multiple? Like you could probably look up some articles where people had an opinion on whether they overpaid or underpaid, right?
Okay.
If you do, you can even weave that into your opinion section. But that's what the deal is. In terms of like why this deal is significant and why I found it to be interesting, um, first of all, it's a combination between the second and the third largest semiconductor manufacturers in the United States. So that obviously is like, like it's an industry defining, it's
Mhm.
a transaction, and um, and it also affects the other big players in the space, such as Texas Instruments, which is the number one manufacturer in the U.S. and probably their biggest competitor, right? And so that's like the who cares. In terms of like why the two companies decided to combine now, I'm into like the strategic rationale, right? One, lots of synergies, blah blah blah. Two, allows them to better compete against Texas Instruments. Three, it's just kind of like the macro landscape, pandemic, government incentives, they get to it's like they get to also like kind of get out in front of it ahead of other competitors that are coming in like TSMC. That can all be in like the strategic rationale part, right? And then like in the end, it's like, what do you think about this deal?
Mhm.
That part might have been a little bit lacking too, to be honest. Now that I think about it, right?
Yeah.
Like here's like what I think about this deal. Analog devices ended up paying, I don't know, X like 8 times EBITDA for Maxim, and that's compared to typical semiconductor companies typically trade at, I don't know, 6 times EBITDA. So they had to pay a little bit on the higher end, but I think given the fact that this is where you can weave in some of the opinion pieces that you find online about this deal, but like if not,
Mhm.
just make something up, right?
Right.
Given the fact that this is a consolidation between the second and the third largest players, I think it actually creates like a very um, strong market position for them, or a very formidable market position for them to really dominate the market going forward. Also give Texas Instruments a run for their money. So I think like it makes sense to pay slightly higher premium for such a quality asset. And I think like the deal in the long run will probably could end up being um, a lot cheaper than it seems on the surface because of all the incentives that are going to be coming from the government, and because of all the synergies that are going to come out of this deal, right? Both on the cost side, but also what's harder to quantify is on the revenue side of things, right? And with the supply shortages in the world that's going on right now, these products are very in demand. They'll probably even be able to raise their prices, and so there's a lot of ways to um, I'm assuming they overpaid right now. I don't even know if they actually did, but like if they did, it's like there are a lot of ways to kind of like mitigate or justify paying a higher price in the current environment. right?
Okay.
I don't know, something like that where it's just like that's the opinion part of it, and that's the part that makes you sound intelligent, right? If you can't come up with it, like just read a few articles on the deal, and then people will comment on like what the market sentiment was about the deal, and then you just like use it as your own, right?
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right, I gotta hop because I gotta prep for
Yeah.
this office hours in 2 minutes. If you want, feel free to join that as well. But any other questions over
Will
here?
do. No, thanks so much, Sam. That helped a lot. Maybe just what did you think of my speed? I've been trying to work on that as well.
Your
Was it
speed?
too fast?
No, your speed's fine. I didn't
Okay.
really notice anything about the speed.
Okay.
It's more about just like being loose, right? And just remember the thing about just like being likable, and as opposed to being
Great.
too uptight about it, right?
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Sam. Yeah.
Yeah, let me know how the interview goes. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe to our channel or podcast so that you can get notified of all of our future episodes as well. If you'd like to apply to work with us so that we can help you in a similar way, feel free to reach out to our team at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. Talk soon.